What is up, guys? Bobgar here, and today we're looking at a $10 Goblins list, also sometimes called 8-Whack. It's called 8-Whack because of these two gentlemen in the front, which are almost functionally identical, Goblin Bushwhacker and Reckless Bushwhacker. I'm not going to go into them yet. I'm going to go over the cards in the deck, starting from the bottom. The 1-drops. We are running 5 different 1-drops for a total of, I think, 15 1-drops. Yeah, it looks like 15 1-drop creatures. 2 Frenzied Goblin. This helps us get past some blockers. We don't want to run a lot of it. It is a little expensive for us to pay the ability all the time, and sometimes the ability is not super relevant, but there's occasions where it is, and it helps us get in, so it's good for that. Goblin Arsonist is a little bit of a combo with another card we'll see later. Goblin Grendade gets us in for extra damage with that. Also can trade with 2 toughness creatures when it swings in. It's kind of like probably the weakest, probably the easiest to cut Goblin in the deck, but it has some nice little synergies, so we run it because of that. It's a pretty decent 1-drop. Foundry Street Denizen is pretty sweet. It gets +1/+0 until end of turn for every Goblin that entered the battlefield this turn. So yeah, it comes out as a 1/1, but a lot of times you'll swing turn 2 for 2 to 3 damage with him, so he gets big pretty quick and he swings for a lot. Mog Fanatic. It's a 1/1 for 1 that you can sack to ping something. Good because it's strong against removal. If somebody tries, if somebody needs to remove it to live and they go to bolt it, you can sack it in response and hit them in the face or hit a creature. It can help some of your other goblins trade up. I mean, obviously then you're 2 for 1ing yourself, but depending on what your opponent has, a lot of times it's worth it. We are a deck that tends to run out of resources faster than other decks, and we're okay with that, because our goal is to rush down our opponent to 0 life, so it plays a little bit like a burn deck like that. So having a goblin like this, where yeah, you have to sack it, but you get an extra damage in, is often good enough. And then also a lot of times you just want to trade it with things like Birds of Paradise turn 1, so it's good for that. And then I've been pretty impressed with Goblin Glory Chaser. We're only running 2 of it just because it's not the strongest goblin in the deck. It can get, especially late game, just chumped and never get in, but if it gets in, it has Renown 1, so otherwise it's just a 1/1 for 1. And once it gets in, it turns into a 2/2 that has Menace, and a 2/2 Menace for 1 mana is actually super good, especially in this deck, and especially with all the buffs we're going to put on our goblins, and we'll see those in a minute. Okay, so those are all the 1-drops. As you can tell, there's 15 of them. We're a very low curve deck. That's our biggest section. Then the 2-drops, we have 12 of them, so still quite a lot. Mog War Marshal puts out a 1/1 when it comes into play. It's just a 1/1 itself, and then it has Echo Cost that we rarely play, and when the Echo Cost goes off, it puts in another 1/1. This one works particularly well with Foundry Street Denizen because it gets it to being a 3/3 turn 2 if you play this turn 2, and then turn 3 you let this guy die. It brings out another copy of him, or brings out another 1/1 goblin. It's not a copy of him, but that pumps your Foundry Street Denizen again, just kind of for free. He also works really well with Goblin Grendade because you can play him out and then just sack the side that's going to die anyway. When you don't pay the Echo, because we're only very rarely going to ever pay that Echo. You just sack him to Goblin Grendade, and then you get the 1/1 anyway. So yeah, he provides a lot of little synergies and little value pieces in our deck. Pretty cool guy. Goblin Bushwhacker is a classic from Zendikar. He's kind of what the deck is named after. It's named 8-Whack because you play 4 of this guy and 4 of the other one with Whacker in his name. Goblin Bushwhacker he says 1 mana, but he's not actually really 1 mana. He has a kicker of 1, which you're pretty much always going to pay. And if you paid the kicker when he comes into play, he gives all your goblins +1/+0 until end of turn and gives them haste. So he's a little bit like a lord for a single turn. So he makes all your goblins 1 bigger power, which is all we really care about because we're trying to race our opponents down. And he gives them haste, which is really nice if you're playing him, turn 3 and you play a 1-drop at the same time, or even turn 4 and you can play another 2-drop at the same time, like Mog War Marshal. Play War Marshal, play him, give all of them haste. That's 6 damage right there, plus whatever you add on the board. So he's what allows us to, one of the things that allows us to rush down our opponents really, really fast. For Goblin Pile Driver, this one's a little iffier, but he's still pretty good. Obviously, he's exceptionally good if our opponent's deck is blue, since he has protection from blue. Our opponents can't mess with him, and he can swing past their blockers. But the thing that we care most about is his second ability. Whenever he attacks, he gets +2/+0 for every other attacking goblin. Which doesn't matter turn 2 because he's not going to attack turn 2. But if you attack with him turn 3 and you've played 2 other goblins and then like a Bushwhacker to give them all haste, and you swing in, he's going to be attacking for like 10 or 11, assuming they don't have blockers for him, which is super big. Kind of forces them to block him if they can, and a lot of times they just won't be able to. You'll be able to swing through, or you'll be able to like lightning bolt down your opponent's creature or whatever, clear the path for him. So he gets big really fast. He's kind of our go big goblin if they don't have. I mean, he synergizes with going wide too, but if they don't have removal for him or a way to stop him, he's a go big threat. And then the other Bushwhacker, this one's a little harder to play. He doesn't give himself the +1/+0, which is a slight difference from the other guy, and he costs 3 instead of 1. But just like the other one, you're usually not going to pay him for 3. You're going to usually pay him for, in this case, 2. So they both usually play for 2, and you pay him for 2 with Surge, which is the reason he's a turn 3 play. So usually you'll play a 1-mana spell and then play him for a Surge, which you can't do unless you've played another card this turn. He has haste, he's a 2/1, and you can only play him, he only gets the +1/+0 and haste all your other creatures if you cast him with Surge, so if you've played another card that turn. So he's definitely a turn 3 play, but super good. And then Goblin Chieftain is basically he's a lord. He acts a lot like the 2 Bushwhackers. He gives all your other goblins +1/+1 instead of +1/+0, but a lot like the Bushwhackers, and he also gives them all haste like the other Bushwhackers do. He's a 2/2 himself. He's really good. Swings in for that, and those are all the creatures in the deck, so that's a lot. So I think it was 15 1-drops, 12 2-drops, 7 3-drops, not a whole lot of 3-drops. We kind of want to tail off pretty sharply because we're not running all that many lands. And then we have a little bit of basically burn spells. I called it finish him, like it says in Mortal Kombat, because a lot of times, not all the time, we will use these for utility in various ways too, but a lot of times we have these in the deck to do the last, 3 to 8 points of damage off our opponent. A lot of times by turn 3, we've gotten in with enough creatures to get our opponents down to like 8 life, and then we can lightning bolt Goblin Grendade to finish them off. But they can also be used, especially lightning bolt can be used to kind of clear the way for you. Sometimes you're just going to do more damage by getting some of his blockers out of the way, or things like that. They are what they say. Goblin Guide, basically 1 mana, 5 damage. That's an incredible rate. The things that are a little bit bad about it are, 1, it's a sorcery, and being able to use it at sorcery speed is way weaker than it would be otherwise. I mean, what you'd really want to do is swing in with all your goblins, take the one that got blocked and blow them up into your opponent's face, but you can't do that. You can only do it in your first or second main phase, and then the other disadvantage is you have to sacrifice a goblin. So usually not a super big deal for the deck, especially because you're going to use this to finish off your opponent, but losing your goblins does suck. Running into a counter spell with it sucks. Can be a little tricky to pick the right time and the right target for it, but super powerful spell when you need it. A lot of times it just finishes out your games when you're, like I said, your opponent's at like 8 life. And then Lightning Bolt is Lightning Bolt. Everybody knows Lightning Bolt. Super good. Deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Clear the path or go to face. Both great options in this deck. And then the land. Simple slide, 18 lands, all mountains. You could do 17 or 16. I think when we're playing as many 3-drops as we are, you want 18, especially the fact that we're running 12 2-drops, which is a little high for the deck. I think that also makes it want to push to 18 instead of like 17 or 16. We are cutting some of the very best goblins in the format, especially the best 1-drops, just because they're actually not terribly expensive. I think that would make the deck, so the deck's right around $10 online. I think it would probably put the deck at like 20 to 30 depending on what you include, but we didn't want to spend the extra money here. Then sideboard, this is one of the simplest sideboards. We're running a lot of copies of the things we're running. 2 Ghost Quarters, we don't want to put in too many just because we do have a pretty heavy reliance on red, but it is very good in some matchups, especially Tron. 3 Tormod's Crypt, get rid of opponent's graveyards, 0 cost, so we don't have to let it slow us down any. Not a bad spell in general. 3 Forked Bolts. This is really good against decks that are running a lot of Birds of Paradise or tokens, or if they're just running a lot of 1-drops, even if you're just doing it as 1 to kill a Dark Confidant, 1 to face or something like that. Definitely worthwhile to board in against certain decks. It's really actually also good against what's the deck called? Mono White Taxes, which just won the GP didn't win. I got 2nd place at the GP last weekend, so I'm a little worried I'll see some Taxes decks. Can kill Thalia's, not Thalia's Lieutenant, what am I talking about? Thalia Guardian the Thraben pretty well. Man, I'm going to have to cut this thing all up. I'll probably just let you hear me ramble on and say the wrong names. Dragon Claw Amulet, 3 of those. This is in the mirror match, kind of. I mean, not necessarily the strict mirror match of Goblins versus Goblins, but against other red aggressive decks. Whenever a player casts a red spell, you gain 1 life, keeps us from dying to like mono red burn. Keeps us from dying to goblins, keeps us from dying to probably Naya burn, probably still worth it in that matchup. Just a good sideboard card in general. It's a little hard because it makes us a lot less aggressive, but for gaining life from all of the red spells our opponents are casting, a lot of times that is enough to have us out-survive and out-grind the other super aggro decks in the format. And then for Smash the Smithereens, Smash the Smithereens is super good. There's a lot of artifacts in the format. Kills an artifact, deals 3 damage to that artifact's controller. So yeah, not only is it a way to kill an artifact, it's also a lava spike to the face or a lightning bolt to the face if you prefer. Yeah, it's a really good card. One thing you'll notice in this sideboard is an unfortunate fact when you're dealing with mono red. We don't really have a good way to deal with enchantments, so I don't think they're super common, but one of my worst nightmares is running into enchantment heavy decks, like Enchantress type decks especially, that run Ghostly Prison and things like that, because we're just not going to have a way to get those off the board, and we need to get them with our creatures. So there's certainly a lot of artifacts that could give us trouble, but it's just, whenever you're playing any deck in Modern, you're going to have some bad matchups, especially a monocolored deck is going to have a bunch of bad matchups, and we definitely have some bad matchups. And then I want to look at the whole deck, so I already talked about this. It's actually less than $10 online, only $9.25. It was tempting to go a little higher, but all of the really big upgrades are $2 a piece, so you know, any upgrade, even a single card, would push us to like 11. And I was like, yeah, well, we'll try running it at $9.25, a little less, probably the right thing to do. $53.20 in paper. Anything surprising on this page? Not really. You can kind of see where the money's going, I guess. Chieftains, Bushwhackers, Lightning Bolts are the most expensive things here. Pile Driver takes up a little bit of money as well. In paper, Goblin Bushwhackers are a little bit expensive, but online they're not really. Same with Goblin Grenades. Yeah, that's pretty much it. The mountains are pretty much free, so not any money spent in the land base. And then we're going to talk about our matchups real quick. I had a lot of trouble with this matchup slide. That little squiggly line there means basically probably about even. I think we're probably slightly disadvantaged because we're a $10 deck against most of those squiggly matchups, but not by a lot. They're going to be, I think they're going to be super close, basically. I think that goes for burn, creature decks, and combo decks. Burn and creature decks is just like, well, that's what we are. Assuming we're a reasonably good version of them, it's going to end up being mostly a coin flip. We're not trying to life gain or anything crazy. We're just trying to burn them down faster than they can burn us down. We have a little bit more reach than a lot of creature decks, so it's possible we'll return faster, but you know, if they draw well, they can easily win turn 3 just like we can win turn 3, and if they draw poorly, they might win turn 4 like we would win turn 4. So it's hard to say. If we don't burn them out, they have better sustained damage than us, and their 3/3s stack up pretty well against all the little 1/1s that we're playing, so they will probably win if the game goes slightly longer, but if we manage to play our fast game, we do have a game against creature. I think we have a slightly good matchup against control. I think we're just too fast for most control decks. I mean, control decks want to counter things, right? If we're playing 3 things a turn, you can counter one of our 1-drops. But you're not going to be able to counter all of our 1-drops. We're running 15 1-drops, not including the 1-drop creatures, not including the 4 lightning bolts and the 4 goblin grenades, and that brings us to what? 23, I think, something like that. It's like over a third of our deck are 1-drops. I mean, if they have Chalice of the Void, we're screwed. But otherwise, it's going to be hard for them to get under us, or get not under us, but get over us and kind of get out from under our burn and fastness. Anger of the Gods is probably a pretty serious threat. If they can play that turn 3, that's scary. Supreme Verdict, I think, is probably a turn too slow. If they're on the play, they might get it off. On the draw, I think they rarely would. But that's, I mean, still, like, all of these matchups are almost, like, dead even in my mind. You know, a lot of it's can we beat them before they stabilize. And then there's the mid-range matchups. And the mid-range matchups, I think, are our worst. They play a lot of 2-drops that just chump most of our creatures, like Scavenging Ooze and Tarmogoyfs. When our creatures die, Scavenging Ooze can eat them. They have a lot of creature kill effects to kill our little creatures before we can really get going. And they have a lot of choke us out effects like Liliana. They can just kind of, I think they can just stall and kill us. Like stall, go mid-range, but just like slightly mid-range to stabilize, and eventually they'll kind of choke us out. So I think we have a good chance against them still. Like, again, we're a fast deck. All we need is a good draw and them to stumble very slightly, and we will beat them. but I think that is the one we're most likely to lose consistently. So I think that's how I see the matchup stacking up. I'm pretty excited about running this one in a league. I mean, I don't think we're going to go positive and go 3-2 or 4-1, but it's certainly possible, especially depending on the matchups we get. And likewise, we could easily go 2-3. If I had to guess, I'll say 2-3, like if I was making a prediction, but it's definitely a deck that can do better than that, and it's certainly a deck that can go 1-4 or even 0-5 if we just run into some bad matchups or get some bad draws. It has the advantage of being an aggro deck, which tends to not die to its own draws all that much, although we do have to be a little careful making sure we have at least a couple lands so we can play our things out. But good draws from opponents will often beat us, so it's going to be fun games, I hope. I think they should be pretty close, not like last week. I think it will not be like last week where we just get run over by things, or we just fold to our own draws if we draw a little poorly. We're not assembling a combo, and we don't have to worry about that like level of having perfect card draws, right? Or sorting through our deck trying to get the right pieces. All of our pieces are good, therefore we kind of have a relatively high win percentage just from having a relatively well-defined and optimized deck for doing what we want to do. So yeah, I'm going to jump into some games. I'm going to jump into a league. I hope you guys enjoy the deck tech and the deck for the week. Oh, I wanted to plug the person who suggested that I play this deck. Grishal from Madcast Gaming, which is a gaming community I am a part of, suggested that I do a Goblins deck. He said that he liked Goblins a lot and wanted me to do a deck for Goblins. So I did that for him, and I hope he sees this and enjoys it. I'll probably ping him and let him know. And also, if you guys are looking for a gaming community that doesn't do a lot of Magic, I think there are some people who play Magic in the community, but it's not really what the community is focused on. It's focused on computer games mostly, so League of Legends, Overwatch, Heroes of the Storm, a lot of multiplayer games like that, and you want a community to play with, check out Madcast Gaming. Pretty welcoming, friendly group. They do a pretty good job of weeding out people who don't quite fit. So a lot of people who are ragers or whiners or things like that tend to get sorted out of the mix. And also people who aren't serious about being in the community are sorted out of the mix because they have a kind of 1-month trial period where you get to know everybody and you have to be a little bit active and things like that. So yeah, definitely check that community out if you're looking for a gaming community. Anyway, so that's that. That's the deck for the week. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you next time. Hey guys, Bobgar here. I just really wanted to quickly say, if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you enjoy my content in general and would like to see more of it, subscribe. I'll be coming out with content, probably not as frequently as I would like, but I will be coming out with more content in the future. And please leave me comments and let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, both in terms of production and in terms of my play and my deck building and all that. Yeah, and again, as I always say, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys next time.